Roman Theodore Reigns may be the most polarizing figure in wrestling history. Someone who was hated by WWE fans to such an extent that even The Rock was booed for associating with this guy after he won the Royal Rumble. The member of the Shield who was set to have the most success and has now finally filled that potential was so hated that he was a huge part of CM Punk's explosive podcast with Colt Cabana. People hated this guy. The Tater Tots promo, the Suffering Succotash promo, the fact that he literally could not lose no matter what he did. Nobody seemed to want this guy as champion. And yet, if you only started watching wrestling after the pandemic in 2020, you have not seen a world without Roman Reigns as champion. You have not seen a world in which this Roman Reigns is not the absolute pinnacle of the industry, is not respected by not just his peers but fans worldwide, and is not overall considered a generational talent. It's not so much a game of two halves as a Roman of two halves. The big dog becomes the head of the table. The man, the guy, the one at the very top, suddenly dropped a level and then was immediately back to the very top, but with a hell of a lot more respect. Let's break this down. Roman Reigns, zero to hero. Let's talk Roman. We're going to start with a quick summary of Roman Reigns in his early years. We start on Wikipedia, where there is a dedicated entry to the persona and reception of Roman Reigns, featuring at least a couple of entries from my own work at PW Torch. The situation was very simple, and it actually comes down very easily. Professional wrestler Roman Reigns debuted on the main roster in November 2012, having performed this developmental system as part of a faction called The Shield, and was well received by critics. Support began to dwindle upon Reigns' transition to a heroic main event singles act in 2014, largely due to his perceived forced push. This would manifest itself in Reigns main eventing 4 consecutive editions of WWE's premier annual pay-per-view event WrestleMania while being booed in all appearances. This is a record he's actually going to hit twice. This year will be again his 4th consecutive. The article tries to cover a lot of ground when it comes to why Roman Reigns wasn't received well. In 2016, Reigns was voted the most overrated by Wrestling Observer newsletter readers. Pro Wrestling Torch critics, including editor Wade Keller, have said company chairman Vince McMahon is engaged on a war with fans. That is where I'm going to start most. Anoa'i himself, Joe Anoa'i is the real name of Roman Theodore Reigns, has suggested that there is jealousy from fans over his major success, mocked those who question if he deserves his fictional role, discounted critiques from non-wrestlers, and declared that he will not change to appease his critics. That last line is starting to look a little bit silly given what we have now. While Vince McMahon was initially so supportive of Roman that nobody else actually factored in, July 11, 2016 from The Inquisitor, WWE rumours Vince McMahon no longer hiring Roman Reigns, giving his push away to other WWE superstars. This particularly came at a delicate time for Roman when he'd been suspended as a violation of the wellness policy. The reception was frosty from WWE and fans as well. To quote, because of Vince McMahon's feeling towards Rollins and Styles, there have reportedly been some talks within WWE that both men will become the faces of both Raw and SmackDown after the WWE draft and brand split. It's recently been reported that John Cena will have a lighter schedule with WWE, but Reigns may have been knocked off the pedestal as the face of Raw. At this time, of course, Dean Ambrose, now Jon Moxley, was the champion, but this is a clear focus on Seth Edward Rollins and Alan Jones Jimmy J Styles. There are multiple sources claiming that Roman failed the WWE wellness policy at the worst possible time because Vince was apparently beginning to sour on him already. This is especially interesting because literally that year, Vince McMahon was appearing on WWE TV, allowing Roman Reigns to beat him up to help get him over. Vince McMahon was committed to this guy. We go now to Wrestling Inc. Joey Styles on why Vince McMahon pushes Roman Reigns and Shelton Benjamin on his WWE return. We won't be talking about Shelton Benjamin, that's a video for another time. To quote Joey Styles, bottom line is if our chairman thinks he sees a future star as a babyface, that's how things are gonna play out. But the answer is Vince thinks it can work. He's been right much more than wrong over the course of the last 40 years. I'm sorry, but I'm not gonna second guess the chairman. When Kelly, this being Kathy Kelly, noted that her female friends love Reigns, Styles replied, that's part of it. Moms are the ones who bring kids to shows. Kids like Roman Reigns, moms like Roman Reigns, that's the reason. Just because some people boo him doesn't mean everyone doesn't like him. It is definitely true that Roman received a mixed response, a notably deeper boo and a notably higher pitched cheer. There was definitely disparity in the fandom when it comes to Roman Reigns, and it seemed like there was also the same disparity backstage, where while Vince McMahon wanted to push Roman, Roman himself wasn't actually that invested in the push. He actually wanted to receive a decent reception from the crowd. A couple of years later, Roman would face Jinder Mahal at Money in the Bank. Backstage at the same time, an Up Up Down Down video is being recorded, featuring Xavier Woods explaining that as long as you're making noise, he's happy, Roman's happy, and the WWE are happy because it means you're invested. And the amount of chants, the amount of noise, the amount of hatred that Roman Reigns received, that sold a hell of a lot of pay-per-views. A large part of the overall dislike of Roman Reigns was due to a perception that he needed a change in character. A huge part of fandom wanted this guy to turn heel, but Vince McMahon, Triple H, whoever was in charge at the time, was hugely resistant to it. We go to Forbes, who state Roman Reigns continues to prove why WWE must push him. This was April 2017, a while later. WWE fans love to hate Roman Reigns, or do they? New Raw General Manager Kurt Angle is the latest to jump on the Reigns has to turn heel bandwagon, telling Washington's Top News, if Vince waits it out a bit, fans will start to accept him, and if they don't, then turn him heel. But the data and statistics continue to prove that even though Reigns is passionately hated by the very vocal minority, the average fan doesn't love to hate the big dog, the average fan just loves him. This information is backed up immediately by analysis of the most viewed YouTube videos and how heavily they do actually factor Roman Reigns. I think it's worth pointing out around this time, I feel Roman Reigns did turn heel. He turned up in the Royal Rumble in 2017 as number 30 and the crowd hated him for it. But if you watch that show, he's wearing a notably different expression to what he actually does earlier in the night when he faced off against Kevin Owens. If you look at the face he wore then, it's the exact same face he wears nowadays as the Tribal Chief. Not only that, but he eliminated The Undertaker, declared it's my yard now, and then retired him at WrestleMania. This led to probably one of the best promos in wrestling history, where Roman Reigns walked down to the ring to evil, disgusting chants aimed at him, stood there for 15 minutes saying, "They're in the palm of my hand," and then with a big smile on his face said, "This is my yard now." Faces do not do that. And many, many wrestlers could not do that. A year later, 2018, let's pop over to Sportskeeda. An opinion piece by Alex Pogorski gives 5 reasons Roman Reigns is pushed despite all the criticism. What I want to point out here is how little blame actually seems to be on Roman Reigns himself, which should tell you that a lot of that reception, not quite real. Number 5, there's money to be made. How much blame is put on Roman Reigns for there being money to be made? This is exactly the same thing people have been saying about the return of CM Punk. Number 4, any publicity is good publicity. Again, an example of something being used when it refers to CM Punk. Roman Reigns is one of those at such a top level that literally any reception that he gets is considered positive. Number 3, and this is where the most overt and obvious blame lands on Vince McMahon rather than Roman Reigns. Number 3 is Vince McMahon is spiteful. Vince's stubbornness is very pronounced, but he actually possesses a far worse character trait, spitefulness. Vince doesn't like to be told he's wrong, and if someone messes up his plans, he'll do whatever he can to get the last laugh. As you're watching, pop your opinion about Vince McMahon in the chat below, in the comment section, because, let's be honest, I suspect a lot of people share this opinion. It gets even worse for Vince McMahon after this. Number 2, Vince McMahon doesn't listen to fans. On several occasions, Vince has said one of the following 2 sentences in some variation or another. He's either said, "I don't give a damn what you want," or "the only person I listen to is me, Vincent Kennedy McMahon." These are not just random one-liners designed to get cheap heat from the audience. This is a real-life Vince McMahon telling fans what he thinks of their opinions. The blame for Roman Reigns and the hatred that he received didn't seem to have much, if anything, to do with Roman Reigns. The hatred for Roman Reigns seems to be a lot more to do with the death of kayfabe, and the hatred kept in reserve purely for Vince McMahon. A hatred that at times I will admit to sharing, because there are plenty of videos on this channel explaining exactly what Vince McMahon has been doing that means he does not deserve your adulation. Reason number one is the most cynical of all. Fans will tune in no matter what. This alleviates blame from wrestlers, from Vince McMahon, and puts it firmly onto fans, like yourself, who tuned in. At the end of the day, all the people that boo Roman Reigns and spend all this time spewing hatred at him will still tune into Raw the following week to watch him wrestle. Vince has realised he can put on a lower quality product and spend less time catering to these die-hard fans, because that's exactly what they are, die-hard. They'll tune into Raw regardless of the nonsense Vince puts on TV, even if that means a continued push for Roman Reigns. I think it's worth pointing out at this particular time that when it comes to the idea of a weaker product, this is before the days of AEW All Elite Wrestling, before New Japan really started to break in over in the US, largely due to the work of Kenny Omega, Jay White, Will Ospreay, and before Impact really managed to recapture hearts and minds with good runs for Deonna Purrazzo, for example. There's plenty of talent in the wrestling world that does not involve WWE, but at this time, WWE held an extremely strong monopoly. With AEW coming, and with Vince McMahon being kicked out of the door, the WWE really needed to evolve. And Roman Reigns was a perfect person for this. He had to become not just Roman Theodore Reigns, but Roman Theodore Reigns Esquire. In 2019, just months before WWE was shut down due to the pandemic, we actually saw an interest in pushing Roman Reigns. Via what culture? Why Vince McMahon won't push Roman Reigns? It's been their biggest week in years, but WWE have barely let the big dog out. This is when The Fiend was champion, and The Fiend would be one of those who would lose the championship to Roman Reigns later when Roman returned. All Elite Wrestling launched their weekly show Dynamite on TNT, still steadfastly promising to change the world with a new brand of professional wrestling that looks suspiciously like several old versions combined into something that could eventually be viable. As a 2-hour telecast, the new era of NXT on USA Network resulted in one of the finest ever single episodes of wrestling television ever, and were pounded into the dirt by the new juggernaut when the ratings were revealed. What this has to do with Roman Reigns is essentially what culture's belief that Roman Reigns was the one to fight off AEW. This is not long after Roman Reigns returned from his enforced break for leukemia, so I can kind of understand why he's not being pushed to the very top. Shortly afterwards, of course, less than 3 months later, he would be lining up for a WrestleMania match against Goldberg. This would not happen because of the pandemic, and this is when everything changed for Roman. For this, we have to start with Paul Heyman. Via TalkSport in 2020, a couple of months after Roman returned, Paul Heyman explains why WWE and Vince McMahon wouldn't turn Roman Reigns heel until now. After the WWE chairman gave the big dog the super push coming out of the Shield, fans resented how he was being forced down their throats and rejected him as their top babyface. And you can see in this picture how Roman Reigns is receiving chants of Fred, Fred, Fred. They've got a speech bubble ready and everything. You can hear the picture. When Reigns returned from a near 5-month hiatus at SummerSlam, he finally turned heel for the first time since his initial run with the Shield. As a tribal chief character, Reigns has become the top star in the industry and is the hottest act WWE has to offer right now. He'd been back 3 months at this period. Paul Heyman said Roman Reigns could not pull off this portrayal of the top star in the industry even a year ago. He wasn't weathered enough, he wasn't seasoned enough, and he wasn't experienced enough. He still looked too young, but now you look at his face, you see some seasoning and some weathering. He was beating the crap out of his cousin inside Hell in a Cell, and he says, I did this to you when we were kids. And here we are, 35 years old doing this, and he looks 35. He looks like a badass 35, but he still looks 35. It's not just Paul Heyman thinking this. Fans on Reddit were posting their thoughts. Roman Reigns is every bit as good as Vince McMahon predicted. Did he get forced down our throats for a while? Yes, but there's a reason why Vince pushed him so hard. He is a megastar now. A heel turn doesn't always guarantee top quality, but look at what happened with Hulk Hogan when he joined the NWO in WCW. This is the level that we're talking about. It's also worth pointing out at this time, he didn't only become the top star in the industry, he also signed an incredibly lucrative deal with the WWE that made him not just one of the highest paid in the world, but also one of the least working in the world. A limited date contract that would reset the terms of the WWE Championship involvement. He would not only make the Universal Championship one of the biggest things you could possibly get, but he would completely undo everything he said in the build to WrestleMania 34 when he was calling Brock Lesnar a part-time champion. Mick Foley, speaking in Essentially Sports, also helped cover a lot of ground on this, explaining how many different factors were involved here. Mick Foley said Vince McMahon was pushing the wrestler to new heights, and in a strange way, the pandemic episodes may have aided Roman in that. The former wrestler also talked about how Reigns needed this push because he wasn't considered the guy. There was definitely a time when Becky Lynch was more the man than Roman Reigns was. We also need to factor in what Roman Reigns himself wanted, and Paul Heyman once again gives us plenty of information about this. This is via Bleacher Report. Heyman, Roman Reigns had enough of Vince McMahon's WWE creative before heel turn. I'm going to go into this deeper, but this makes it very clear how much control Roman Reigns himself had over this heel turn and what would relaunch his career. Heyman says the feud rivalry story with Baron Corbin over dog food and the infamous suffering succotash promo had weighed on him enough to where he said, "I've had enough. I've reached the cap. I can't go any further. As the big dog, I've peaked. And as an athlete, I haven't peaked as a performer. I barely scratched the surface. I've so much more to offer. And since I'm taking time off, I'm not coming back as the same person." Heyman then provides information as to Vince McMahon's reaction here. McMahon says, "I'm going to put you with somebody." I'm thinking, has he read my contract? I said, "Well, you know, Vince, the options are kind of limited in that. I'm trying to tiptoe into a delicate situation here where I'm about to butt heads with him. I'm thinking Ronda is pregnant. Brock's not coming back with Saudi down. He's certainly not putting me with Roman." And he goes, "I'm envisioning Roman Reigns with Paul Heyman." I'm thinking, oh my God, he's going to pull the trigger on this. He would never pull it with Cena. He would never have allowed Cena to come to the dark side. The moment at the end of SmackDown when the camera first panned past Roman Reigns to show him sitting with Paul Heyman is one of the biggest and best moments that the WWE have ever put together. I was going live shortly afterwards hosting a post-show with Sportskeeda. It is still available if you want to find it, because I sat there agog for minutes. I could not fathom the consequences of what we were about to see. A Roman Reigns in the dark side, who had changed who he was. A Vince McMahon who listened to the fans. And a character that we had never seen before, taking wrestling by storm. Roman Reigns got everything he wanted. A raise, less dates so he could spend more time with his family, the exact character he was looking for. He got to work with Jey Uso, and the members of the Bloodliners would be built afterwards. He decided who he worked with, he decided who he pushed. And even now, this year, he's barely defended the championship because they owe him so much time from what he's been doing over the last few years. Roman Reigns has become the biggest name in wrestling. It's how everyone knows he is Roman Theodore Reigns. Why the name Theodore has become so popular with newborn children. Roman Reigns gave himself the opportunity. He fought for himself and he made it happen. We go now to the Sportster, carrying a report from Fightful Select. This is as regards Vince McMahon and his involvement, because historically, the bloodline, suffering succotash, all of that, everything Roman Reigns was written by Vince McMahon. However, this has changed. Vince McMahon is gone. We'll forgive the typo. Has this major change affected Roman Reigns' creative decision at all? According to Fightful Select, Vince McMahon being out has changed nothing about Roman's path. However, the report did reveal how Roman Reigns' character decisions are made. Reigns contributes heavily, as does Paul Heyman. The former head of ECW is more than just an on-screen mouthpiece for the tribal chief, but someone who is very active behind the scenes creatively for Roman. Roman Reigns is wrestling. He's everything I love and more. He's everything you love and more. He is the WWE, making his championship, or championships now, bigger than they have ever been before. The monopoly might have died as regards WWE and wrestling, but the monopoly as regards Roman Reigns and the interest of fans has not. This version of this character is the absolute pinnacle of what wrestling can be. Let me know your thoughts on Roman Reigns in the comments. I've been Tom Colohue, and thank you for watching.